So the issue of chronic back pain or back spasm, back injuries, etc. And sometimes what happens when you go to doctors. Sometimes what might happen is the doctor says, well, you need to strengthen your core and you'll be fine. Just do abdominal exercises every day and somehow that will alleviate your back pain. For some people that might work, and for some people it probably does. For others, it might only be a small part of the solution, and for others, I think it's not going to help at all. It's really not. A friend of mine, not long ago, who I used to do yoga with, I used to teach a little bit, he had a back spasm and he was laid up in bed. I hadn't seen him for a while. We weren't doing yoga together at the time, but he had gotten on the phone with the doctor like a friend, and the doctor friend had said, you know, you got to strengthen your abdominals. That was it. If we look at this person's life, and you know, in some ways it mimics a lot what a lot of other people experience. He's a father, multiple children. He runs a very, very stressful business where he's managing a lot of people's money and a lot of money. So there's the stress of daily life and family life. There's incredible muscular tightness in his body, right? Whole body. I mean, hamstrings, hips, back, everything was so tight already, which we were trying to alleviate when I was working with him. At one point he had gone on a small hike with his daughter and had to carry her. She's 3 and had to carry her, and so that put a lot of strain on the whole body and maybe overload the back muscles also. He had been interviewed on TV for his company, so there was all these things happening in his life. And then later that week, you know, he reaches down to tie a shoe or something, and bam, his back spasms, it goes out. Some of you have been through that. I've experienced that also at one point in my life. So if we think about all the things happening in just this one person's life, there's decades and decades of muscular tense and stiffness in his body. Leads a sedentary life, you know, drives to work, sits at his desk, drives home. Very, very stressful life, physical, professional, and not necessarily family life, but having kids, four kids is certainly a lot. All these underlying things happening in his life. And then there's a trigger incident. In that case, it was bending over to tie his shoe. So there's a trigger incident. So to think that for this person, and I'm using his as an example because this is very recent, to think that doing abdominal work is going to solve all his problems and alleviate his back pain, for me seems pretty ludicrous and absurd. It might help, but he's pretty strong in the abdominal area, you know, pretty fit, active guy. And I've sort of heard variations of this over the years, a lot of times, many different people, different backgrounds, different trigger incidents, whatever. The prescription has often been the same. Just do abdominal work and you'll be fine. That'll solve it, which I think is absurd and sort of ludicrous. I think a much more balanced approach is sort of what I'm offering, and this program I've created for low back care, which involves breathing. I know that seems silly to say because it seems obvious, but relaxing the body, relaxing the back muscles, breathing, de-stressing, and then of course some very great sequences and great poses themselves for alleviating a lot of the muscular stiffness in the body and the major muscle groups that we associate that pull on the back or are very often implicated in back pain. Psoas muscles, hamstrings, outer hips, gluteus medius, etc., etc. So if you're one of those people that's having chronic pain and you haven't found solutions, or you've tried abdominal work and that hasn't solved it, you're not alone. I created this series out of my own experiences with back pain. I had similar sort of story of a lot of emotional, psychological things happening in my life that were overburdening me. And there was a triggered incident involving a bag of groceries, and bam, my back went out. Now, setting 2 bags of groceries in the taxi floor in New York City, that wasn't enough to throw my back out. But everything that was happening before it, going back weeks and months, finally my body had had enough. So a lot of people have similar stories where their back goes out and it seems like, well, doing that caused the back pain. And it really didn't. That was the trigger incident. But we have to look at all the myriad of things happening in the person's life before that, going back weeks, months, sometimes years. And with yoga, restorative yoga, and these breath awareness practices, I think this program will create a much better comprehensive solution for a lot of you out there dealing with back issues. Thank you. Namaste.